Hello, my name is Dr. Tracy Allison. Thank you so much for joining me as I discuss one of the major projects for ITED 8300, the Self-Created Professional Learning Network. In your course, as you can see, you have access to multiple links pertaining to the Self-Created PLN. I am currently logged in as a student because I wanted to be able to see the same thing that you see when you're inside our course. In this video, I plan to share an exemplar of a student's work from last semester who gave me permission to share her work. Prior to showing you an example, I want to stress the importance for all the projects in this course, and not just the self-created PLN, of making sure that you carefully read and follow the requirements given in the rubric, as that is how your work will be graded. Therefore, there should not be any surprises at the end. So let's look at the actual rubrics so we all know what it looks like, what's included in it, and where it's located. As you can see, and I'm making the assumption that you will have already read through the steps to complete the self-created PLN, the rubric, which is entitled Creation Phase of Self-Created PLN Grading Checklist, is located here. When that file opens up, you can see that it is 2 pages long. The rubric consists of 17 different indicators and criteria that you should make sure that you are following. I am not going to go over each one of those now, as I will discuss those in more detail once you actually see an example of a self-created PLN. Let's start by looking at her original post that she put in Check Out My PLN. As you can see, she listed all the information that was included in the direction. She included the topics to be covered in her PLN. She listed her target audience, the instructions for access, and her schedule. In addition, she included an example of her marketing materials that she used in inviting her colleagues. She's a media specialist, so she posted this in her Tech Tuesday newsletter that she sends out to all of her staff, and she also sent it to a colleague who works at a local RESA to involve them as well. I believe she indicated that she used Canvas to make this, and she included a QR code to make it easy to access it. Now, let's look actually at her self-created PLN, which was entitled Making Blended Learning Work for Your Classroom. As a media specialist, she indicated that she wanted to do double duty with her assignments, as she wanted to make sure that she was using things that she could actually use in her school, and not just create something to just be creating something to fulfill the requirements for a project. So one of the topics for professional learning for her high school was blended learning, so that is where this topic came from. When you open up her Google site, which is just one version of a way or an example that can be used to create one of the self-created PLNs, you see right away that it's very colorful, it's attractive, it's very vivid, and it looks as if it's going to be very easy to navigate, which it is. Some of my other students last semester used Google Classroom, Facebook, Canvas, and a wide variety of other options, all of which had their own pros and cons. So when you look at her PLN, you can see that there's a navigation bar here at the top. She immediately begins to talk about what blended learning is. Her learning targets are very visible when you first open up her site. And you can see all the different links that you're going to be able to get to from her course. I especially loved her Meet Dana Farr section, which is her name, which went into great detail about her credentials, her background, and what she had to share with people who would be participating in her self-created PLN. One thing that I want to point out is that this particular student obviously had, or she learned throughout the semester, how to use Google Sites very well. And the only reason I'm pointing that out is that I had some other students who also use Google Sites, but it was pretty ineffectively done. And when I say that, I mean that it had very little content. There were some graphics, but there wasn't any instruction that went along with the graphics. There were no links to other information. It was not interactive whatsoever. Or they had several missing components listed on the rubric which should have been incorporated into the product but did not. So let's look and see what her PLN actually looks like when we click on, some of these links. So in looking at the rubric and the different criteria, once I had the link for her self-created PLN, it was super easy to access. Her hot link worked easily, did not need a password to get into it, and it was not blocked in any way by her school district. Everything that we needed to know about her self-created PLN was included in her original post that I showed you earlier. At the bottom of the page, you can see that she adds information when it says if you had questions about this course, to feel free to contact her using a Google form. Through that, she includes how long that her PLN will be in action, or can email the course instructor. For some reason, I cannot push that up far enough for you to be able to see her email address, but I promise you there is a link there. In addition, she had a spot on her site in which, let me click on this discussion page. There was the option to use an app called Teach, which was a new one that I had never heard of before, in which she could allow you to submit questions to her, and through the app that she would respond to questions. So there was a Google form for discussion. There was the Teach app. Both of those were great ways to get information from people, but one weakness was that while that went directly to her, you could not see anywhere on the site where there was a discussion going back and forth. So I'm going to go back to the home button. Again, once you open up her self-created PLN on the front page, you see that it's very colorful, it's well organized, and it is super colorful. We don't have to hunt for any information. You know exactly where you can click on to get information. And everything that's in her self-created PLN is indeed related to her topic. You immediately see the blurb at the top that I mentioned about the purpose, what her topic is about. And as I said before, one of the pieces of the rubric talks about credentials and information about the designer. When you click on that, you will see a picture of her and much information about her, including her background, her interests, what she hopes that you get out of her PLN. In addition, she lists some additional ways for you to be able to connect with her or to contact her. She shares her Twitter feed, her Instagram handles, and her email address again. Moving forward with our rubric, going back to the home page again. She included her learning targets, which were front and center on that entry page. Again, she has multiple tabs, which shows you how to navigate the course. If you click on that, it's very obvious, again, what her professional learning goals are, and it gives you specifics about how to navigate her course. She has links again at the top. It's really easy to figure out what to do or how to use her site. As mentioned before, she has a section about herself, which includes her credentials and her responsibilities as the manager and the creator of the self-created PLN. One of the areas on criteria talks about some form of information gathering, which I mentioned the Teach app and the Google form. So there is ways for her to collect information if people choose to do that. So one weakness was that she didn't purposefully create a way or seek out information about her participants, but she had the option to be able to do that. Criteria number 9 was talking about the timeline for activities is established. That was listed in her original post. And on the front page, again, it did mention that she would be maintaining this site through the end of fall semester 2021. And as we discussed before, the layout and design, she used unique visible fonts, cool colors, cool designs. She said she was going for a retro design. She indicated that she didn't use a template, but she created that herself. And overall, it's just very pleasant and attractive design. I've already showed you the marketing information that she used. In addition, she sent out reminders through emails when they had a faculty meeting. She gave a plug for that, encouraging people to interact with her. She also sought out the colleagues at her RESA as they were also looking for presenters about current topics in education, and so she shared that with them, but she did not share with me how that was received or what they actually did with it. So when you click on each of these, it talks about what is blended learning. It's taking a moment just to leave. And so she indicated that she used Google Slides, she used Jamboard, and she used Canva to create content. I'm not going to go through all of these, but within her information, she used warm-up activities, she used learning targets throughout each little mini lesson that she shared. Clicking on different learning strategies that you can use in your classroom. She had a section about station rotation, using choice boards. I'll click on those kind of quickly. Again, as you can see, she used learning targets. She had a warm-up activity. She used research, let me go back. She used research-based information, and she included a reference at the end about her information. And then she just used a variety or gave a variety of instruction, and I won't go into all of these. I just wanted to point out some of them. So again, she used Jamboard, Canva, Google Slides, and Nearpod somewhere in her Google Sites. She went in depth on her rubric self-assessment, where she talked about the components that she purposefully included into this self-created PLN for UDL and for adult learning theory. So I just wanted to quickly point out one example, which does not mean that you have to use Google Sites to create your self-created PLN. As I mentioned before, some people used Facebook, some people used Google Classroom. Just a disclaimer about Google Classroom. If you use it, you must make certain that it is accessible to your instructor and to others in your group or others in your classroom, because some school systems do not allow people outside of their district in order to access Google Classroom. I loved Google Classroom as a teacher and as an administrator and used it in a wide variety of ways. However, that was done within my school system and not shared without, because my school system was one of those who would not allow anyone outside of it to access it. So I hope that this brief video has been helpful as one example of one possible way to do a self-created PLN. Thank you so much for your attention and for joining me.